thing that's on my mind tonight, and conservatives everywhere. The idea that people are saying, well, he was an extremist, or he was a racist, or he was a Nazi, or a misogynist, whatever. Charlie Kirk was a mainstream conservative Republican.
Yeah, mainstream conservative Republicanism, if you are, obvious, if you're honest about it, is that, okay? It's those things. Why the fuck are you mad? You're mad because you recognize those things are supposed to be, we're supposed to learn that those things are bad. Okay, it hasn't reached a level. It has not reached a level in our collective consciousness that like misogyny is seen as like a good thing. Vice still to this day is not seen as a virtue. These are things that people actually reflect on negatively, which is precisely the reason why they still push back. It's like when a Nazi says they're not a Nazi, okay, when they're in public, because if they're branded with that moniker, it makes it a lot harder for them to reach broad audience. Of course, that can change. If the collective consciousness moved in that direction to such a degree that like fascism was seen as a positive thing, okay, they would just openly say they're fascists. It's that simple.
Had views that are held by tens of millions of people, including more than half the country in the last election.
And the reason why I'm mentioning this, okay, the reason why I'm mentioning this is so that you understand that there are still a ton of Americans with good conscience, okay? There are still so many people that have discontent. There are so many people that actually might experience some of these opinions that you might consider to be bigoted, but they can be convinced, and you should never give up on them. I never do, and you shouldn't either. That's why I've, for years, maintain this position that you always have to be kind to people and be aggressive against the institutions, just like Michael Jamal Brooks, rest in power, used to say, okay? Be kind to individuals, be ruthless to systems. And that's what we have to do. Would you stop yapping? I love when people say that. It's like, no, this is what I do, man.
If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. It begs the question, when you see a black pilot, you wonder, you say, I hope they are qualified. And in the spirit of affirmative action, we have Ramon and Cadillac are your two pilots. They've never flown before, but they are black. If I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, is she there because of her excellence, or is she there because of affirmative action? I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know you do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously.
The war on white people continues.
You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously.
We are raising a generation of weak people like Simone Biles.
LeBron James is a self-interested, narcissistic, and we know he's not very smart.
You're representing your nation. You're selfish sociopath.
Not very bright, not wise, not somebody of good character.
She is a shame to the country.
Blacks in America did not have the same rights they had today. Data shows they were actually better in the 1940s.
Let's get loud for Kyle Rittenhouse.
I'm also going to offer some context and some nuance about the death of George Floyd that no one dares to say out loud, which is that this guy was a scumbag.
Remember what BLM stands for: burn, loot, and murder.
Now, does that mean it deserves to die? That's two totally different things. Of course not.
Prowling blacks go around for fun.
You know what's crazy about that is like, that right there, if you speak about Charlie Kirk in that way, oh my Lord, you are getting fired. People are posting your address online. They're coming after you. Maybe you go to jail. You know, the administration is doing that. Like, can you imagine there was a point where like Joe Brandon was coming out and being like, you talk shit about George Floyd, I'm coming after you, Jack. You know what I mean? Like the administration was just like, that's right. We are going to make it illegal to say mean things about George Floyd. No, but that is the hysteria that these guys actually believed. On the one hand, they did this shit, like while they were saying this stuff. On the other hand, they would turn around and be like, and they're coming after us for saying this. The administration is woke. They want to kill us for saying the truth. And it's so crazy. You're a fucking terrorist piece of shit. Brother, this administration is literally terrorizing you, okay? They are terrorizing you. I know you don't give a fuck about Jimmy Kimmel, and neither do I. I promise you, you are not getting a better deal here, okay? Bullshit. Explain to me. Is your life more affordable? Are you capable of purchasing a home? Do you feel like things are getting better now that trans people are no longer able to compete in athletic endeavors at the collegiate level? Did that actually materially improve your life in any meaningful capacity? You could, in the past, you could at least make this argument that like, well, I'm a Trump merchandise salesman. This is what I do. So obviously the Trump administration has been fantastic for me. Now you can't even say that because he put tariffs on the Trump merchandise because all of it was coming from Bangladesh. It's awesome. What does that have to do with anything at all? What do you mean? That's what politics is, dumb. You are no different than the liberals who don't understand this because you also analyze this from the lens of team sport. My team is winning, so I guess my shit's better overall. That's what liberals do too, and I get very frustrated with them over this, where it's like you have to wake up. That's the entire point of politics. You are supposed to make demands from your party, from your elected representatives, and they have to actually follow through on those demands. And if the only thing that they're promising to you is no improvements to your material reality whatsoever, but simply punishing your enemies that they have designed as the singular evil in society, whether it be undocumented migrants that are just simply trying to make an honest living, okay, toiling every goddamn day in 100-degree heat out in the fields, and they get punished for it instead of getting the proper documentation, which is that simple for the record. It's that easy for them to just like literally become documented workers in this country. All right. If you think that those guys are your actual enemies, and it's not the fact that like your boss will never give you an honest day of work's wages that you deserve, and that your landlord is going to consistently keep increasing your rent prices, and you're never going to be able to actually own a home, and you're never going to be able to retire, like those are the real problems in your life. It's not the random Guatemalans. Wake up! Do you understand? That is the entire point. Donald Trump didn't win because he said he's going to dominate random the Mexican migrants. He won because he said he was going to fix the cost of living, and he tied it back to Mexican migrants. And now he's punishing the Mexican migrants and the Guatemalan migrant workers. And guess what? Cost of living hasn't improved at all. Wake up. Stop focusing on irrelevant bullshit. Stop focusing on your neighbors. Stop focusing on people that have the exact same class position as you. This is how they get away with robbing you blind. Voting is about voters extracting concessions from politicians. Always remember two fundamental truths. Politics is about the distribution of resources and power, including violence. Who gets to do it? Who is the recipient of it? Structural violence, direct violence, state violence, and the like. And democracy is about extracting concessions from your elected representatives. Democracy under liberal capitalism is seen as a pressure valve to make people feel as though they have an option, to at least make people feel as though they have a say in this process. But it's very obvious that a bourgeois democracy never yields those outcomes. And that's why there's so much discontent. And in the absence of any sort of real structural pushback, in the form of labor unions, in the form of organizing and activism, in the form of like direct action, this duopoly that we exist under keeps doing the same shit. Profit over people every single time.
To go target white people, that's a fact.
There's no such thing as white privilege or racism. So
Black people are allowed to talk about black culture in a way that white culture cannot. Black people can go up and say that there's a baby mama problem in black America, and white people are not allowed to say that. Oh, I just did. So what are you gonna do, cancel me? Black people are allowed to say, I'm
a grown man, I got way
black
too much
people
to
are allowed. Skin color now gets their own summertime celebration. Oh wow, look how far blacks have come. It has now become a racial complaining day. Thomas Sowell and Justice Clarence Thomas are far better black role models to celebrate than Martin Luther King. This guy is not worthy of a national holiday.
there's a mythology around MLK that does not warrant the reverence that he gets treated with in America.
We have a federal holiday to a guy that talked about race all the time. Kirk describes King as, quote, a bad guy. It's true. We celebrate the Civil Rights Act more than the American founding. The country made a mistake when it passed the Civil Rights Act. Also true. The Democrats are not lifting a finger to remember the well over 1.
There have always been conservatives who obviously were alive during the MLK period that despised MLK, and a lot of conservatives that never gave up on that. But because of the way that MLK's legacy was whitewashed by liberals for the most part and became like a much more palatable figure by American consciousness, in the last 20 years or so, shitting on Martin Luther King became a big no-no. Post-Reagan, I would say, shitting on MLK, especially in the last 20 years, became a major no-no, okay? Republicans would be branded as racist if they were to do so. Charlie Kirk was bringing that back, that old school conservatism back. By the way, old school conservatism kind of feels a lot like you're just being a racist, right? But the reason why people still get very upset when you bring this up about Charlie Kirk's position on Martin Luther King, the reason why they get mad is because, again, a lot of people would look at you funny if you were to say these things out loud. What Charlie Kirk was saying it out loud, and he was defending them vociferously. He believed it. This was his position. But obviously, it reflects poorly on him and his movement, and therefore, now conservatives don't want you to bring it. They don't want you to bring it up.
100 people that have died in Texas Hill Country. The death toll likely would not have been as high if it wasn't for DEI.
Ketanji Brown Jackson is what your country looks like on critical race theory.
You're gonna remove my appendix and you're a black lesbian?
Ketanji Brown Jackson is an embodiment of the tyranny.
When people say this is out of context, you have to remember something. As someone who is the recipient of out of context smears, you have to listen to directionally where this ideology is going. But in this circumstance, when people say, oh, you're taking him out of context as far as like the MLK quote, for example, it's not like Charlie Kirk is actually saying like MLK was bad at being a bad guy. You know what I mean? The rest of the context isn't like changing his perspective. The rest of the context is just more defense of that position. Do you understand? He's not sitting there and being like, MLK's bad. And then people clip that. But then when you see the extended quote, it actually turns into MLK's bad at being a bad person. He's actually a really good person. Like that would be something that is taken out of context. The fact that he shit on MLK is now being compared to him by the right. Yeah.
That we currently live on. She's an ideological, unintelligent, yet confident fanatic.
Why does Kirk believe passing the Civil Rights Act was a mistake? Now, again, apparently they don't listen to the show because we do that at least once a week, right?
So she wants to be the first ever black woman on the Supreme Court, yet she won't even admit that she's a woman.
The transgender movement is an introductory phase
These doctors need to be put in prison.
to get you to strip yourself of your humanity
A Nuremberg-style trial.
to mesh with machines. Interestingly, I think there is an argument to bring back the MRS degree.
Reject feminism.
Young women need to get married at a younger age and start having kids.
I'm studying sociology. No, you're not. We know why you're here.
Submit to your husband, Taylor. You're not in charge.
You will find a husband if you have the intent to find a husband.
You got to change your name. If not, you don't really mean it.
Democrat women want to die alone without children.
A lot of them are on birth control too, and birth control really screws up female brains, by the way.
That's really rich. I didn't know women not to complain 50 years ago. That's funny. And we should tell them to stop freezing their eggs and start finding their partner earlier and have lots of babies.
Every single one of you need to make sure that your loved ones are not on birth control.
So materially insane to think that 1 in 5 American women will be raped in their life.
It is, I agree.
No, meaning that they're lying about being raped.
You're comparing abortion to the Holocaust.
Absolutely, I am. In fact, it's worse. It's worse. Because Jewish donors have been the #1 funding mechanism.
Sure, he said black women are a problem, but you didn't watch the full context. Come on. True. Yeah. He actually meant black women have a problem, which is that they don't run every aspect of the country, and they should. That's what he was actually implying. It's just that it's out of context to make it seem like he was anti black women being in any role in society. Yes, he has said abortions are worse than the Holocaust over and over again. He has said that. Of course, that's like another extremely radical position. The reason why they have to keep up this notion that this is a moderate conservative position without revealing what it actually is because most people understand, like the Joe Rogans of the world. If you go to Joe Rogan and you say abortion is evil and wrong and barbaric and it's worse than the Holocaust, Joe Rogan's going to be like, what the fuck are you saying? And I know for a fact that he would say that because it has happened. If you recall, the Babylon Bee guy, one of those Babylon Bee guys went on the Joe Rogan Experience, and Joe Rogan and the Babylon Bee guy had a conversation about how abortion is murder. Joe said, I don't think it's murder. There are certain instances where it's valid. And the Babylon Bee guy straight up defended the notion, defended on principle that abortion is murder, that if a 12-year-old was raped, that he would force that 12-year-old to carry a pregnancy to term. Joe said, my daughter is like 12. You know what I mean? And he obviously, in that moment, it became very real for him because The reason why I'm bringing up Joe Rogan is because like he is closer to like his positions, not his like material realities, obviously, but his positions, his brain processing capability is quite literally closer to like a normie than myself or anyone in this community, right? Regardless of your working class background. And you know this already because you talk to your coworkers. If you talk to your coworkers, then you've already heard them repeat and regurgitate Joe Rogan style takes. This is a major aspect of conservatism. On the one hand, you want to be able to advance these positions. You want to be able to get other people on board with these positions. But on the other hand, you kind of recognize that even coworkers who are normally much more open-minded to these like ridiculous positions, there is a level of reactionary sentiment that they won't go beyond, where they'll say, that's too much for me.
Of radical, open border, neoliberal, quasi-Marxist policies. By the way, this is my other problem with death penalty. It takes too long, too many appeals. It should be public, it should be quick, it should be televised. Well, at what age should you start to see public execution?
16. I think you could do it earlier. I think you maybe at age 12.
I want to watch that execution. That'll make
chicken ooh jockey. Sure, your brain processing capability is so much better. I never said that. I'm a dumb guy, man. I say it all the time. The difference is I know I'm dumb. And I think that's like a superpower as opposed to the dumb guys who don't know they're dumb. Do you see what I mean? I know my limitations. I think a lot of people don't. And that is a major issue with a lot of people. They don't know what their limitations are. They think they have none. And they just keep chirping. And we exist in a society where people who chirp without any knowledge whatsoever are rewarded for it by other dumb guys. And that is a big issue, okay? Dunning-Kruger, entitlement. The notion that you are a unique snowflake, and by virtue of you coming up with any position, no matter how stupid it is, other people must respect it. Other people must listen to it, and other people must believe it and defend it. Anyways.
My day better. A lot. I mean, Joe Biden is a bumbling, dementia-filled Alzheimer's corrupt tyrant who should honestly be put in prison and or given the death penalty for his crimes against America.
The Democrat Party believes everything that God hates.
Like, we're dealing with maggots, vermin, and swine here. These are not good people. They're not even a little bit good. In fact, I know people that went to Haiti passively as like agnostic atheists, and they came back searching for Jesus because they saw like legit demonic activity. Kamala Harris wants to see the elimination of the United States of America.
Democrat Party supports everything that God hates.
There's not much you can do, folks. You have a government that hates you. You have a traitor as a president. Buy weapons. I keep on saying that.
As top Republicans reject any link between GOP rhetoric and Paul Pelosi assault. If some amazing patriot out there in San Francisco wants to really be a midterm hero, someone should go and bail this guy out. Native-born Americans, you better buy weapons, everybody. Have a lot of guns at your disposal. I would never leave your home without a weapon. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights.
We actually need looser gun laws because I think that
gun laws.
Oh yeah.
They said we have more guns at the Turning Point HQ than you could imagine. Yeah, if anyone ever tries to come, that will not end well.
Oh no, imagine the world without Joy Reid. Imagine the world without Sheila Jackson Lee or Michelle Obama or Ketanji Brown Jackson.
I am channeling the emotions of millions of conservatives who are angry. They knew Charlie, they loved Charlie, they viewed Charlie as a mainstream conservative.
The saddest part about it is that this is true. He is, by virtue of his job position, Charlie Kirk is a mainstream conservative. That was his role. And as mainstream conservatism became more Trumpian, which is the dog whistles coming off, right? And turning into direct statements about exactly what they mean, okay? I mean, he was always a mainstream figure, and he kept being a mainstream figure. I miss the old conservative party. No, the old conservative party always was this as well. They were just more restrained in their commentary. I need you to understand, make no mistake. This is what Republicans have always represented. This is what the right flank has always represented in this country. Why? Because they have to hold on to some kind of political polarization. They have to hold on to some kind of political polarization because they are aligned on broad economic issues, and they have become more aligned since the Reagan era. Once Reagan came in and neoliberalism was fully implemented, Republicans and Democrats aligned on and found broad consensus on a lot of the economic policies. And therefore, they had to find things that they were arguing over so that people could choose one party over the other every time the elections came around. I'm saying Charlie Kirk was a mainstream conservative voice, but mainstream conservative voices do not want you to discuss what those positions actually are, because they also realize these ideals are inconsistent with the way most Americans think American liberal democracy is supposed to work. I think that's fine. It makes sense with the way liberal democracy is supposed to work.